Guild Wars 2 is the furthest MMO from being pay to win, but there are definitely incentives to buy the expansions, otherwise they wouldn't be doing good business. As a new player experiencing the free version of the game before you decide you want to purchase the full game, there is going to be a huge difference between you and a fully geared veteran. While this difference won't matter as much in PvP because gear is normalized and you'll just fight players at your rating level, and in PvE, you will be able to beat the main storyline that is available to the core game without requiring much skill or grind. In World vs. World, however, the difference in gear is noticeable because you are fighting against other players and you won't have masteries or a mount, but World vs. World is such an imbalanced game mode that you can overcome this. Knowing where to find fights that are favorable to you takes knowledge, or you can find some friends and decimate others. And with some skill in kiting, you can easily survive in World vs. World. So I went out into World vs. World using all 8 core specializations, Revenant not included, and I removed my amulet, which is a huge loss in stats. I only used stat types available to core players, used no elite specializations, and reset my World vs. World masteries to emulate the power level of a free-to-play player. Is it exactly the same? No, because I know how to play the game. A new player is going to struggle with more than just gearing up and getting their mount. So let's go out and see if I can get kills on each of the 8 core classes to show that yes, it can be difficult starting out, but using these strategies and positioning, you can still get results. So I started out on core Elementalist with a Fresh Air Scepter build. You would normally want Marauder gear because of the low health pool, but if you don't have Heart of Thorns, you're stuck with Berserker or Valkyrie. Lucky for me, the first person I see is a thirsty Spellbreaker who wants to run me down. But using the super speed and instant cast skills, Fresh Air kind of destroys warriors even with a scuffed build. Unfortunately, they got away, but then I also got yoinked into the gate and couldn't get out. Well, that wasn't the best start, but it definitely can't get any worse, right? I went on to abuse more warriors, but then left to Eternal Battlegrounds because it's much easier to get kills there since you can usually find players to play with. The thing about that is, your enemies also get that luxury. So if you're fighting alone or in enemy territory, you can expect to be outnumbered and chased down. If you're new and aren't too confident, you don't want to be venturing into enemy territory alone. What you want to do is either wait until your enemy enters your territory, or have some mobility and only explore into territory adjacent to your own, and when you see an enemy, you just slowly lure them back into your territory. Fighting near your own sentry marks enemies on the map with an orange dot, which is a huge tell for your team and allies will come running to get a kill. Likewise, if you're in enemy sentry range, you'll be marked and may have thirsty pip farmers approaching shortly. This Tempest stayed in my castle for too long, and even though I could barely touch them, I used the PvE technique to get multiple hits of my fiery greatsword when knocking them down against a wall. I think that's a sufficient enough kill for an Ellie. Next, I swapped to Core Engineer and removed my amulet. Swapped to Zerker gear and removed my masteries. It's kind of rough to play Core Engi in situations where you get focused, but in small, even fights, it can do a lot of damage with grenades. Imagine paying for an expansion and still losing to a Core Engineer. Okay, maybe that's a bit harsh. Obviously, it's pretty easy to get kills in a large Zerg, so really anything can work even if you aren't providing much, but the best way to contribute is with immobilizes or pulls because positioning is the most important thing in these large fights, and if you can compromise someone else's positioning, then you can get them killed easily. Then I went on to Mesmer with a Carrion Condition build, which has stealth, which can be really good for disengaging unfavorable situations. But you have to be careful still with all the damage flying around. You can still easily get hit while unseen. Mesmers have plenty of confusion on condition builds, which wrecks players who just attack through it. I found a teammate in the Colosseum who needed help, so I immediately went in for the burst and tried to peel for them. They went down, but I went for the revive after stealthing them with mass invisibility, and then got the rest of the kills. You need to support your allies because if you don't and they die, then they can't possibly support you. Warrior was the next, and to be honest, this power build is one of the better builds even if you have access to expansions. The CC from Shield, Bull's Charge, and Rampage followed up by the Axe or Greatsword Bursts can be a lot of fun. But let me tell you the tale of the Weaver and the Warrior. Back in the day, the Warrior used to be of higher class than a mere tailor. But the Weaver worked at it, sewing, weaving, and crafting their armor, and now they have better gear than the Warrior. So I went back to spawn, and some highwaymen tried to stop me on the bridge, and they underestimated me. So I took one out and then chased the other one away, but they survived because they used the water, and that's a good way to survive because using the water can change things up if you're not going to survive on land. With Necromancer, I used a Signet power build and got into a lot of group fights. The worst part about Necromancer is you're easy to focus without support, so positioning is probably the most important on this class. Using the staff is important on any build because of the amount of pressure you can do without being in dangerous positioning. Then when you're high on Shroud, you can go in and do plenty of damage while being relatively safe. Next I went on Ranger, and the issue here is that you can't use the most powerful pets that you get from the expansions like the Smoke Scale. So I used the River Drake, which is very tanky and does good damage, and then a Wolf which can fear enemies away. A normal Longbow Ranger build seems standard, but instead of marksmanship, which sounds like the Longbow trait line, skirmishing is actually better because it gives you pure critical damage and fury, whereas marksmanship just reduces cooldown on Longbow skills. Regardless, the Longbow on Ranger is such a safe weapon to get kills because it's the longest range weapon in the game and still does good burst. So I didn't struggle to get any kills. I even killed a perma-stealthing thief, which is one of the larger menaces in World vs. World. But Rangers are one of the few things that can kill them because the Longbow 2 Rapid Fire will keep tracking targets in stealth if used before they enter stealth. Now on to Guardian. This Power Meditation Guardian is just a budget version of one of my favorite specs, the Willbender, but it will make do for now. One thing is that without a team, Guardians lose a lot of their effectiveness because many of their skills help allies. So when you're alone, it can be pretty punishing, but this build has the most mobility possible for a core Guardian and good self-sustain capability. Using the ports with neutral mobs or enemy structures can give you a lot of survivability, not just on Guardian, but anything with targeted ports. Being able to quickly react and find these targets will greatly improve your survivability. I eventually found a Thirsty Thief with one of the most putrid builds I've ever seen, but because Guardians handle conditions well, played aggressively when I had cooldowns, and used line of sight effectively when I was out of cooldowns, I was able to survive and eventually get 2 kills. Finally, I swapped to my main, the Thief. This core sword dagger build is already one of the best builds to play, so surely I would have no trouble finding kills, right? Actually, I was chased down relentlessly and I had not many options for securing a quick kill. But here is the thing, the more you survive, the more windows will open to you to find those kills, so always focus on surviving. I abused my sword ports to create distance and juke, and eventually the other team had an even bigger group that just rolled them over. Justice had been served. Then I found a druid with one of the most annoying builds ever, with tons of dazes, instant conditions, and stealth. Normally I would run away from this, but I stayed too long and was taken out, so I came back to take out the final boss. Against these bunker type builds, the only way to win is to overwhelm them with damage when you engage, then back off while you're on cooldown because you won't win if you trade evenly with them. So I did my best to keep pressure on them while still managing their constant condition pressure. Eventually I did get them down, but the residual conditions almost took me out before I cleansed them with the tree I had stolen. So there's my experience role-playing as a free-to-play player. Obviously your experience will be a bit different, but I think it's important to show that skill is much more relevant than having optimal gear. If you're interested in learning more about World vs. World, Check out the new player guide in the description and the video I made showing how to survive in World vs. World. If you like this content, give the video a thumbs up, subscribe for more, support me on Patreon or by sharing my content, and I will see you all next time.